going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of our Haas F1 Manager series. This is part 3 and round 3 of the F1 season as we head to Australia to the Australian Grand Prix around Albert Park. We are checking our email, trying to make sure we have everything going. Mick does have a development point, and so we're trying to decide what the best thing to do for him. And so we'll just go ahead and attack his lowest rated stat in defending to a very nice 69 with that development point. Kevin also has one. We're also taking a look at his defending also being extremely low comparatively to his overall, so we're definitely going to be working on Kevin's defending as well. So we're definitely in a position where once we get positions, we definitely want to hold them instead of trying to have to worry about overtaking all the time. So we'll work on their defending as we go, and hopefully it will be good here. So taking a look at our post-race, we definitely get a fantastic result there in the last episode. We are currently holding P6 in the constructors as we get a couple of car parts finished up and a lot of emails to go through. Our board confidence check-in, they are definitely satisfied with our work. We will hopefully improve that here as we continue on and continue to learn how this game works and the best way to go about things. But the fact that we haven't disappointed too hard at this point is definitely a win. Taking a look at our financials right now, I don't think there's really too much to worry about as we are only a couple of rounds into the season at this point. So taking a look at our monthly development report, I'm still not entirely sure how to read this. We know that both of our cars have a lot of work to make up for in terms of straight line speed. Unfortunately, we have no design capacity at this point. So we are currently working on an underfloor and a new front wing, and so we have 21 days until we can start a new design. So we're just going to have to unfortunately just wait until then. But nonetheless, we are taking a look, making sure that everything is as it should be. We're trying to remember the development and manufacturing that we just finished and making sure everything looks okay. Trying to get an idea of what to research on next. We're trying to see what we already have done some new things on and what we still need to do. We'll get the new suspension put on both cars there, as we only had one as of now. So we'll get both cars onto the new suspension and we will move on to continuing to get through all of these emails. The emails can definitely feel a little overwhelming, at least from my experience so far. Definitely especially after race weekends and before the next one, there's just a lot that's going on in the grand scheme of things. That was just email telling us that our new suspension was done, and so we already had that put on, so it's fine. And now we'll set our performance targets for this upcoming weekend. We're debating on doing a qualifying position. Do we think that we can get K-Mag up into P12? We'll just stick with getting into Q2 just because that's usually the safe option, at least as of this point, until we kind of continue to learn. Checking out our board confidence, they're definitely still happy with our race performance and how things are going, so we are going to just continue moving on here, taking a look at our staff, seeing if there's anything we can do to improve, especially also with our facilities. We have $22 million kind of burning a hole in our pockets, and so we definitely are taking a look and trying to think about what the best use of our money is in the grand scheme of things. But we will leave that for now, and we will move forward now towards our first series of practice. And let's go to race weekend.
Welcome to Melbourne for a weekend of fierce competition. We're a stone's throw from the beach here at the Albert Park circuit. It might be party mood in the grandstands, but in the paddock, expectations and tensions are high. The Albert Park circuit is bursting with rapid corners and a long straight where drivers can push their speed to the limit. Good attention to medium speed downforce will likely make beating this beast of a track just a little bit easier. We might still be early in the season, but that doesn't mean we can sit back and relax. Everything is up for grabs and nothing is certain at this stage. There's nothing like a race weekend in Formula One.
So let's go ahead and get started with our practice 1 preparation. We are actually going to simulate this session here, as at this point we're still playing around with the best combination of simulating and actually performing. So as we take a look, Kevin Magnussen comes home in P14 and Mick in P16. And you can see there that we get our setup confidence. We're both about 50%, but they do get a lot of track acclimatization here in FP1. So going into FP2, we will also simulate this. I'm really just curious to see at this point how well the AI, the game can set up your drivers and how important it is to really manage it yourself. I think it's something I definitely want to get better at, where we're taking advantage of a bit of experimentation. And yeah, they do an okay job, and we'll go ahead and move forward here into Q1 as we also simulated FP3. No point in just continuing to look at those result screens. I think we definitely won't be doing that too much. But as Kevin and Mick come home to finish their first qualifying session here, we find ourselves, just behind the pace of the McLaren by 1/100th by Kevin and 3/10ths by Mick. So a very solid first run there in quali. We're going to go ahead and get them set up once again to go out. And we're going to try a bit of a different strategy here to send them out sort of mid-session, as well as hopefully at the end, trying to see if there's any advantage to, trying to get a bit of a tow, or if there's any advantage to running mid session rather than just at the beginning and just at the end. So this episode is really just kind of a lot of experimentation, trying to find what works for us, as we need every advantage as we can get. As Mick comes home to need a bit of a refuel. Him currently running in P10 and Kevin running in P9 here with just a few minutes left here in Q1. We're feeling pretty confident about getting into Q2. We definitely are well off the pace of the top 10, I would think, by the end of the session, as there are quite a few people behind us who are going to be, making some jumps towards the end. You can see there in actually the bottom 5, Lewis Hamilton is out there. It's still down there, and so he'll definitely be displacing at least one of the positions ahead of us. So we need to improve quite a lot, as Alonso also is down there. As you can see, they have yet to put in a time, and so they're really going to push it there, actually, as Hamilton finishes his lap there going into P3. Definitely on a different level in terms of pace when it comes to us. So we'll get these guys ready to go towards the end here of Q1, trying to time it the best we can to put in at least as much of an improvement as we can. I don't really necessarily care too much about the results of quali, as long as I feel like we gave it our best shot. I think if we run into a situation where we get held up, or we run into, mistakes, I think that's one thing. But if we're running out there and putting in the best laps we can, I think it's hard to be too disappointed with our final results. So this is going to be, I think, the first real session that we try and get out after the rest of the group. We'll be sending Mick out first, and then followed up by Kevin. But we're going to try and time it the best we can to have them running last, and try and see if we can get them to finish qualifying 1 here by being the last to cross the line. We'll go ahead and send them here. They'll come out pretty much after everyone, which is kind of what we want. I still think we sent them a little too early here. You can see that fast lap by Sainz is a 1:18, and so I think I could have waited a little longer to send them out. But regardless, as the rest of the field starts their flying laps, we will hop on board, keeping an eye on the laps by our guys here as they start their final flying lap here around Albert Park. And it turns out I really enjoyed this screen, but I kind of wish, looking back now, that I would watch more qualifying laps on board instead of just watching this. I know I enjoyed watching the rest of the field come home to cross the line, keeping an eye on who's below us, seeing if they improve. You can see Stroll and Vettel below do not improve. You can see Norris does jump us, and so we currently sit in P12 and 13 with a bit of a butt clincher on the line here, as both of our drivers go a yellow sector 1, and we have a very stressful close here, as actually Mick gets pushed down, and unless he improves by over 3/10ths, that was it for him. So unfortunately, Mick out in Q1, but nonetheless, Kevin comes home to finish in P13 and will move on for us into Q2. Bit unfortunate for Mick. I think that last lap left a lot to be desired, especially with that first sector. I think I don't know if he ran into traffic or just really, really struggled, but nonetheless, Mick out, Kevin moves on, and we are going to try and put Kevin in the best position possible to hopefully try and make it into Q3. I don't know if Albert Park is really a circuit that suits our car very well, but we're going to do everything we can. We'll send him out on a used set of tires here to start qualifying here in Q2. I think I like this strategy of using, you know, a one run set of softs at the beginning of the round and then putting on to the new set of softs at the end to really put the pressure on Kevin to make the most of it. I think for us, just making it into Q3 is going to be a blessing. I don't think we're really fighting for pole, so I don't mind using soft tires kind of more liberally than maybe smart if we were fighting for pole. But nonetheless, here we are, Kevin on his flying lap here. Actually, no, he just finished his flying lap well off the pace of the Ferrari, it would appear. So solid 4.5 seconds. I think he ran into a bit of traffic, or I would hope a lot of traffic. And so at this point, with actually 2 sets of softs, we could run, you know, a potential, you know, for running multiple push laps here as we near the end of Q2. We'll see what we end up deciding to go for here. I'm kind of playing around with the idea of running on another set of soft tires, but nonetheless, the new set is definitely the way to go here. And at this point, with 9 minutes remaining here in Q2, we need to make a decision on whether or not we're going to send Kevin out, and we will try and get him some clear air as the rest of the field will hopefully come in and towards the finish of qualifying here, trying to get in the way as much as we can without getting a penalty, as we'll start our second flying lap here, kind of getting held up by Perez there. So he does go green, but it will not be up to snuff for what he could do. But Kevin will jump up into P7. A fantastic result despite the traffic. So this is giving us a lot of hope for what this last lap could look like. And Kevin, unfortunately, doesn't make it into the pits. And so that's very frustrating, as I'm not sure exactly why he didn't pit there. So we are, you know, going to do our best to see if we can get out there, get him refueled up immediately and send him immediately. But I think at this point, it's really, we're just getting in the way more than anything. We won't make it to the line. And at this point, we're more of a nuisance than actually getting a last level push lap. So that's very confusing. I'm not entirely sure why that happened. But nonetheless, we're so happy that we sent Kevin out on that push lap there with just a few minutes left. So he ends up coming home and finishing in P10, even though he did not get a final push lap in there at the end. And Kevin is into Q3 for the first time here. And we are riding the gravy train at this point. We get that new set of softs, and we actually have another set of softs that are available to us should we need to. And so we are feeling pretty blessed in this one. Thankfully, no one else improved more than Kevin did during that last run that he actually got in. So this is very, very exciting. We're gonna send Kevin out nice and early again. You can see a lot of drivers are waiting, you know, a little longer. We'll go ahead and take an eye at the sectors here, as Kevin is the first one to go. We'll probably see a lot of purple sectors until the drivers in front of us finish up their sectors there. But you can see that Kevin puts in a 120.181 there on his first lap. And so we will keep an eye on how that stacks up to everyone else. This is a used set of softs, which should be mentioned. And so that time is only going to improve on a new set. So we are very, very excited to see where Kevin finishes up here, currently running in P5, 1.2 seconds off the pace of Max Verstappen. But nonetheless, we are feeling pretty good. Anything, you know, like I was saying, anything at this point is gravy. We are feeling pretty good about our possibilities here in the race. And now as we get down to our last few minutes here, we're going to try and put Kevin out there in the best position possible to get as much clear air as possible. And we will send him out right behind the current pole sitter, Carlos Sainz, on his way out. And this is it. Our first trip into Q3 and our first trying to get as high up into this, you know, high up onto this 10-minute qualifying shootout. And you can see here that we get an inkling at Kevin's initial kind of flaw in terms when it comes to qualifying, is that on his outlaps, Kevin enjoys a fast outlap. We figure out that Kevin enjoys getting buddy with the group ahead, and we'll see if that
try to increase the pace a little
if that comes back to bite us at all here as Kevin crosses the line here down the main straight towards turn 1. Actually, watching what I just did right there, you can see exactly what happened in the previous. I actually canceled the call in instead of calling Kevin in previously, so that's why he stayed out on track. So at this point, I'm learning something watching this back and doing the voiceover, so that's very interesting. And always be learning, guys, always be learning. As we will actually hop on board here onto the TV cam here over the halo, keeping an eye on Kevin as he makes his way around. A green first sector is a very good sign. We are at this point just hoping for anything that we can get as Kevin makes his way here back down the back straight, heading towards the fast left right of this chicane here in sector 2. Kevin goes green in sector 2 and on his way. Zhou finishes just above us. Max Verstappen goes provisional pole. Pierre Gasly with 2 yellow sectors does not improve, and it's all to play for here for Kevin Magnussen. We will be the last to cross the line. We get bumped down into P9, but with 2 green sectors, we're hoping to improve even just a little bit. Hamilton behind will wrap up his lap here in but a moment and more than likely push us down into P10. But as we make our way towards the start finish line, we will cross it. 3 green sectors and no improvement. That's a lie. Kevin does improve, but not enough to bump Zhou Guanyu down, and we find ourselves still a couple of tenths off the pace, but a fantastic result nonetheless. Kevin finishing up here in P10, starting in the top 10 around Albert Park. Well, let's go ahead and head to race Sunday.
Welcome to race day. And before we get down to it, last minute checks are being made.
Haas proved quite resourceful during qualifying. That puts them in a very good position to make the most of this race start. We didn't see any unexpected prowess from Alpine during qualifying, but they did well for themselves. Everything's still open to them for the race. And the race will be taking place under blue skies. That means the teams should be able to apply their strategies without any added complications.
Exciting choices lie ahead then for the teams and their drivers here in Melbourne. So let's see what happens.
So we are excited to get going here in Australia, but first we need to get our strategies sorted. Yeah, probably going to keep it relatively simple here, not try and do anything too fancy. But for Mick, it looks like we are going to have an option of either a long 1-stop or a 2-stop here. I think we're just going to keep it simple. Go with the 1-stop for both drivers here. We're going to play with Kevin's just a little bit. Put them, offset them, their pit laps or their planned pit laps, but we're going to keep it relatively straightforward here and let's head to the race.
Shine, it seems like nothing can dampen the mood of excitement here at the track. Looking at the Haas, and it's Schumacher as the second driver today. Slower than most yesterday, so today they'll be starting from the bottom half of the grid. The teams are ready to go. Brace yourselves for the Australian Grand Prix. And it's lights out and away we go.
Red lights, they are out and we are away in Australia to 58 laps around Albert Park. And we're going to go ahead and just speed this up a little bit here, trying to get through this race as best we can here. But Kevin immediately losing a position and Mick also not having the best pace here at the start. We're going to put on the overtake and put on the aggressive tires, trying to make up any positions we can. Kevin with a fantastic opportunity here. Like I was saying, starting at P10, even though he drops a position here on the opening lap, that's not the worst thing in the world. We are going to have a long race ahead of us and 57 more laps to get that position back. But nonetheless, we are on our way here. We're going to be managing Kevin's ERS here a little bit. We'll move them both back to neutral. We'll try and get Mick here to get around the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll by throwing on the overtake, but just not able to have the pace down that main straight to get the move done. We'll leave it on and see if we can get Mick around the Aston Martin here. But as of right now, it looks like Mick is going to have a bit of trouble here with Lance Stroll, who is really not doing us any favors by dropping back. And actually, as we jump over to Kevin, we immediately see Kevin has crashed. Kevin has crashed and get some major front wing damage. I also saw McLaren in there, and what a mess. What a mess. Just a few laps into the Australian Grand Prix, and we are having to make some very difficult calls here as this is going to get very, very bad. Kevin currently on the medium. I mean, at this point, we will fix that front wing, and we need to make a decision on what tire to throw Kevin on. So now at this point, he's going to find himself very much in the back of the pack, and at this point, I think we're just going to leave him on his medium tires, try and get, you know, as much pace as we can get here. But as we see, getting pressured by the Alfa Romeo, Kevin just locks up, rams into the back of the McLaren, and that will be that. And Kevin also picks up a penalty here. And so it is going to be a tough day for Kevin Magnussen on this one. Currently now running in P19 with Norris the only one behind. So Kevin will box, serve his penalty, and get that front wing replaced. It's going to be a long day in Australia for Kevin. A day that started just 4 short laps ago. And it's going to be a very, very long day for the Haas crew, as Mick also now is still currently running in P16. We accidentally left him on overtake here for a little too long. I was distracted by the fact that Kevin locked up and took out a McLaren with him. I know we're trying to beat the opposition, but I didn't know we were going to necessarily be doing it like this. Nonetheless, a 10.6 second stop for Kevin still finds him coming out ahead of the McLaren, and so P19 it is for Kevin, and on we push now, 30 seconds off of P18 and of Nicholas Latifi. So at this point, Mick is our only hope here for points, and we'll hop on board with him, trying to see what Mick can make happen. He tries to go around the outside of Lance Stroll and actually gets the move done. And now is in a bit of an Aston Martin sandwich, now trying to hound his bit of a mentor in Sebastian Vettel. This is where we realize we accidentally left Mick on overtake. He'll move to the inside with DRS, get covered off by Seb. We'll see if he can make a move, but falls back in line and will bide his time just a little bit. Thankfully, Mick has plenty of fuel to play for, so we will push him up, and Mick locks up and crashes into Sebastian Vettel. What is happening with our team and our drivers here in and around Australia? Both drivers crash. Mick is out. Mick crashes enough where Mick is out of this race. What a day. And we are not even double-digit laps in this race, but Mick locks up, takes out an Aston Martin with him, getting pressured a little too much, pushing maybe just a little too much early in the season, and Mick unfortunately causes the safety car to come out here on lap 5. We're not even a tenth of the way into this race, and that will be that as we just continue to try and wonder exactly what happened on this one. And that's going to be a front wing, that's going to be a suspension, that's going to be a lot of components down the drain for Mick. And so at this point, Kevin currently running in P19 may have the opportunity to make something happen on the restart under the safety car. Mick picks up a 5-second penalty, even though it won't matter. So now both of our drivers currently are holding on to a penalty here. And so it is a very tough day for us. We will actually go ahead and look to box Kevin here, because at this point, what really do we have to lose? Unfortunately, we're debating on throwing on a soft set of tires, but they're also debating on the hards, try and maybe run a very clean race towards the end. So in the end, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating to be on this screen debating on what to do when your drivers have both already crashed. So we'll decide to leave Kevin out, try and play not necessarily track position, but just trying not to put ourselves in any worse position than we need. We find ourselves very much off the pace, and at this point it doesn't look like we're going to catch the safety car unless we get very lucky. We can see the safety car is ending. We may have an opportunity to catch up down the main straight. We will tag on to the end of the train here, but we find ourselves now actually in P16 thanks to a spin by Valtteri there. And yeah, we're going to be speeding this one up quite a bit, because I think at this point I was very, very frustrated with both drivers. We'll put Kevin up to full-on attack, trying to make up as many positions here as possible. And thanks to the first round of pit stops, Kevin actually finds himself back in the top 10 and now up into the top 7. But obviously, he still has yet to pit. We do get the wet weather predicted sign, and so we may be looking at potentially going on to a wet weather tire, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think at this point I had yet to figure out the weather tracking screen, and so we get told that there's potential for wet weather, but we don't know what that really entails or when it's going to come in. Let's see if we can find it here in our data view and our race view. We can look over the track, and here we find it. Now at this point we can see when the wet weather is going to come out, and at this point, now that we're currently running in the top 10 on a used set of medium tires, we need to start to think of the only other opportunity we will really have here in Albert Park is to try and get out ahead of the weather here, as we are now battling a Ferrari with Charles Leclerc going down the main straight. Kevin's going to push back a little bit. I mean, I was kind of proud of Kevin here. So you can see now the rain is starting to fall. Unfortunately, I think we probably should have tried to keep an eye on it, and we keep Kevin out a little bit too long. We speed it up, and unfortunately we leave Kevin out as it really starts to get very, very wet. Thankfully and luckily, we can see that not everyone had actually pitted at this point, and we're kind of panicking at what the right tire move is going to be, and we're extremely flustered by the start of this race. And at this point, we are just trying not to make any more major mistakes. As we actually do find ourselves with a bit of an opportunity here, we will pit onto a fresh set of inters. Unfortunately, we'll also get the view of everyone else going immediately onto the wets, as you can see that rainfall ticking up, and there it is, officially onto a wet track. I wish I would learn to rely more on the track view, the rain weather forecasting view. So we just missed the pit lane there. We will box Kevin again. He'll come out in P13 now on the wet weather tires, and I think this is really just kind of going to be the rest of the race here, at least until the rain starts to either subside or what. This race actually causes me to start to pay attention a lot more to what the weather on the track is going to look like, as we are trying to make as many good decisions as possible here. As we are past the midway point of the race, still on the full wet tires on full push, because I mean, worst case scenario, these tires can absolutely go to the end, and so we're trying to do the best we can as we find ourselves currently running here in P12, chasing around an AlphaTauri, trying to do the best we can, trying to keep Zhou Guanyu off our backs. We find ourselves a lap down in this race, but from a day that went from bad to worse to bad to decent again, at this point we're finding ourselves just a couple of positions off of the points. But unfortunately for us, it is a very, very wet day here in Melbourne, and it is going to be a long day here in Melbourne as well, as we find ourselves at lap 36 of 58, trying to make up as much ground as we can here on the AlphaTauri ahead. But at this point, with a 6-odd second gap ahead, we definitely are looking less and less likely here for points. But after a crash in the first few laps of the race by Kevin, this is actually a fantastic recovery drive from him, as we are trying to do our best to put in a solid result here on pouring rain conditions. And we are actually chipping away at that gap a little bit now, under 6 seconds, about 5.5 seconds to go before the AlphaTauri shows up. We can see now that the rain is absolutely coming down even harder. 7 millimeters of rain here, actually pushing up almost to 8 millimeters before it will start to come down a little bit. And now we are looking at the possibility of trying to decide if we run into an opportunity, can we potentially move on to a slick tire, as Kevin makes the move on Pierre Gasly, finally closing that gap and moving up here into P11. Unfortunately, quite the gap still remains ahead, 13 seconds to the Alpine of Esteban Ocon, as the rain starts to subside and the water on the track begins to subside as well. And we are trying to decide what is the best opportunity here for the finishing few laps of this race. We find ourselves in P11. Is staying on the wet tire really the best call? We definitely have plenty of tire wear left, but if that rainfall goes down into interest territory, could it be worth it to potentially pit onto the intermediate tire? We'll keep an eye on the rest of the field and see if as Kevin locks up. Definitely not what you want to see, as that gap to Esteban Ocon had been slowly dropping. You can see now that as the rainfall drops, we need to keep an eye on our tire temps for sure, as the drier the track gets, these wet tires will overheat more and more. So now we nearing just a few laps remaining. We find ourselves still in P11, chasing down, slowly trying to whittle away at that gap. But we can see there 8 seconds remaining, and effectively almost at this point almost no rain coming down and almost no water on the circuit. It is going to be very, very hard as these wet tires are overheating quite severely at this point. And we are nearing an opportunity where, with only a couple of laps remaining as Carlos Sainz actually begins the final lap, is going to be, unfortunately, I think, our final position here. Very much worn these tires down, trying to do the best we can, but that 8.5 to 9 second gap to the Alpine in 10th is going to be a little too much to overcome. And Kevin here, as we will try not to blow a tire as we drip below 30%, and we will head forward, cross the line, finishing in P11 for the second week in a row. Very unfortunate, but considering how this race started, we are not complaining too much, as it could be a lot worse.
Kevin Magnussen showing us how it's done. A great result. This is a good result for Haas, more than enough to satisfy the whole team.
That's right, the team really deserves to celebrate this success before looking ahead to the next race.
And they're in 6th place in the constructor standings at the end of this weekend.
Now the teams will be looking ahead to Imola, where the season progresses with the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Get ready for some fierce competition.
So it was a very roller coaster of emotions kind of day for the Haas F1 team, as Kevin comes home to finish P11, and unfortunately Mick DNFs from this one thanks to a couple of accidents in the beginning of the race. What could have been for Kevin had he not locked up there in the beginning. But nonetheless, Kevin holds on to P9 in the Drivers' Championship. And for the constructors, we still hold on to P6, but now with McLaren's weekend, they draw even with us in P6, so it's going to be a hard-fought time going forward. But that will do it for us here, and finishing up round 3 of the F1 season, getting our paychecks, and we will move on to part 4, and I will see you in the next one.